In the hills of the Galilee, we find ourselves in another amazing ruined town. Now, of course, this is a very important town to Scripture, but not in the way that you may think that it is. This is one of the most well-preserved synagogues and locations of the first century, and one of the places that we know for sure that Jesus was.
My name's Brandon, and my mission is to show you the evidence of the kingdom of God. So many Christians live their lives as if God doesn't exist. They say they believe in him, but they don't actually walk it out. I honestly believe exploring places like Israel is going to give us context around the Bible that we didn't have before. So buckle up and subscribe as we make the kingdom real to you.
Today we find ourselves in the ruins of one of the most well-known towns in all of the Bible. And that's not because this town was particularly huge or amazing, but actually one person in the Bible made it well-known to all of us, and that would be Mary Magdalene. So welcome to Magdala. In this video, we're going to talk to you about where Magdala is, why it's important, and show you some of the most amazing things that have been found here in Magdala overall, including a first century synagogue that we know for sure Jesus taught in.
So first things first, let's talk about time period and location when it comes to Magdala. In terms of time period, this city was very important during the first century, during that time of Jesus period. It was actually destroyed in 68 AD by the Romans, and this is because there was a huge rebellion kind of going on all over Israel during that time, and of course this is when the temple was destroyed as well, right at 70 AD. In terms of location, we have to talk about the Galilee overall. We're going to be talking about several different locations all around the Sea of Galilee, and so we have to talk about how important this location actually is. Not only did Jesus do most of his ministry in this direct area, but this area is really important to how Israel functions overall. The Sea of Galilee is really the only large body of fresh water that Israel has at its disposal. While Israel actually has a ton of different water sources depending on where you are, the Sea of Galilee, of course, is the most prominent freshwater body in this whole entire area. Most of the other water sources that you're going to be looking at in Israel are all aquifers that are underground, and sometimes they can be really hard to get to depending on where you live. So the Sea of Galilee is the most readily available freshwater source that kind of flows throughout Israel. Now, of course, remember, this comes from all the way from the north through the Sea of Galilee, down the Jordan River, and ends at the Dead Sea. So this is a really, really important body of water. As we look back at our topographical map, we can actually zoom into the Galilee area, and you can see that the Sea of Galilee basically forms a bowl here, where all of the water is funneled into this large kind of center area where we see the Sea of Galilee today. This gives us context for so many different things in the Bible, including the weather that we hear described at different points. For example, when they're on the sea and then randomly a storm will appear out of nowhere. This happens all the time at the Sea of Galilee because of the topographical area that is around this specific focal point. Now, Magdala specifically is on the far western point of the Sea of Galilee. This would have made for a great bay, a place to build boats and to launch them from this port, but of course this would have made perfect sense as Magdala was a fishing village. We'll talk a bit more about that in a second.
But first, here is the first century synagogue. There's a couple of things that are really amazing that were actually found in this location, but first, just take a look at this. Is this what you imagined a synagogue to look like? Take a look at the area around it, how it's shaped, and how big it is. It's not very big at all. Here is the entrance to the synagogue, and as you can tell by these benches, they think that this was actually a study hall. And this would have been used as some sort of Beit Midrash for Magdala in particular. Remember, this is a Jewish town, and if they had a synagogue, they would want to train up new rabbis, etc., etc. So here is where they would do that. Imagine students studying in this area. After they've gone to a mikveh and cleansed themselves, they would come here to Beit Midrash or to the synagogue in order to hear the rabbis teach. And then that brings us here to the main room of the synagogue. This is where the teaching would have been done and where most of the rabbis, Pharisees, and people that were in this town to learn would go in here to hear the rabbi teach, and that includes Jesus. It says in the scriptures that Jesus went to all the towns in Galilee and he taught at their synagogues. Of course, this is really close to Capernaum where Jesus' base of operations was, and of course he would have come here. Not only do we know that because of this verse that talks about him going to all these different synagogues, but also he met Mary Magdalene, and most likely he healed her in this area here. Take a look at this room right here. You can see that several of the pillars here would have held up the roof that used to be here. They think that most likely this was made out of wood and probably some sort of earthen material, as a lot of roofs would have been during that time. But you can also see that there are many benches around this synagogue area. Just imagine how filled up this place would have been during the times that Jesus came and spoke here. A lot of people didn't agree with him during the time that he was alive, but a lot of people really started to follow him, especially in this area of Galilee, which would have made this synagogue really important to those people, hearing him maybe for the first time speak about the good news. and the truth of what heaven actually is. Now, before I forget, let's talk about this box right here. Why is it so prominent in this synagogue? Well, this is a replica, but that box was actually found here. And this is another major discovery that happened here in Magdala. You see, all throughout history, we've had struggles with people denying that the Second Temple even existed, or if it did, what it looked like or what the purpose of it was. Was this something that everybody cared about, or just the people in Jerusalem? Or did it go beyond that? We've learned over the years that, of course, the Second Temple was incredibly important, but this box right here actually houses images of what the Second Temple could have been like, at least pieces of it. Things like Solomon's portico, or even ornate things like the curtains at the Second Temple. This was a really, really cool thing, and it helped us to understand the Second Temple a lot more. And I want to emphasize how amazing this discovery is. The Magdala stone and even this synagogue weren't even located until 2009. Much of this land wasn't even owned by someone who wanted to excavate it until 2006. So a lot of this is so much more amazing than we give it credit for. And to be here is a real privilege. And in fact, just to overstate it even more, me and Vanessa are the only ones that are in this place at all right now. The gift shop is closed. The entrance is not even the same entrance that you normally walk in. It's totally different than we've ever experienced before.
And while part of this is really exciting and it's great that we get to film and be here for a long period of time by ourselves, there's also part of it that's very, very sad, knowing that tourism has not really returned since October of 2023.
19 days since the worst terror attack in Israeli history.
Literally, I've never seen this before. Vanessa and I were here in Magdala for over 2 hours completely alone. And not until the very end of our time there did we see another single person in this area. Not even anyone that was staying in this hotel. And trust me, we need to talk about this hotel.
But real quick before we get to that, I wanted to thank Imagine Tours and Travels for sponsoring this trip and this video. Imagine is one of the most amazing tour companies in the world, as its foundations really started back in the 40s, and now all of that experience is here today for Israel. They're the ones that let us do this trip safely and efficiently. They helped us to plan out every single step, and they could help you too. If you want to plan a trip with your church or a ministry or just a group of friends, they could help you to really make sure everything happens exactly as it needs to. They know all the ins and outs of Israel, as well as several other locations in Europe, Greece, Rome, you name it, and they could take you there. There's a lot of different things that they do logistically that really helped out with this trip and would help out with yours as well. If you guys want to check out Imagine, go to ittworld.com, and I'll leave a link in my description so you guys can go there really quickly. Now, personally, I would say that you go to Israel with us through our Imagine trip coming up on December 2nd. That link is also in the description down below if you want to sign up for that. But if you want to do your own trip, or if you want to sign up for someone else's trip, you can go to ittworld.com, and they'll have you all figured out over there. All right, now let's talk more about Magdala. Now, one thing that we needed to talk about is the existence of this hotel right here. Of course, there's some kickback that I've heard from a lot of different people when it comes to this hotel, because underneath it is certainly more ruins of Magdala that have not been uncovered, and yet the hotel exists here covering them up. So what is the play here? Do you make a hotel and make money and have Magdala be a place that people come and stay, or well, do you uncover all these excavations and let it be an open site like that? Well, obviously in this case, the people that own this location decided to build this hotel here. And I've heard from many people that this is a horrible decision, but I'm sure others also love to stay here and they think it's an amazing location for a hotel. So I don't know, it's a hard thing. Tourism in Israel is always this fight, right? Do you want to keep everything as it was meant to be or as it was back in the first century? Or do you want to keep it as it was during a later period in time or earlier period in time? Or do you just create something new in that location? I don't know. It's really difficult. I love that they kept most of the ruins here, but it is a shame that we're losing a piece of Magdala underneath this hotel. In the hills and the mountains of the Galilee are some really important biblical sites, including Magdala, Capernaum, Bethsaida, Chorazim. There's a lot of different places here that, well, we can learn a lot from. And as amazing as Magdala is, we have to understand where it fits in society. What was important here in Magdala? As you can see, this is a pretty large area and a pretty big city. I mean, especially for Jesus' time. Magdala is known for its fishing, and specifically it actually helped with Rome selling them a fish oil called garum. And this was a huge product of Magdala. It actually made them a ton of money and made them very popular during the time of Jesus and afterwards. This was known as the fish city to the Romans, to the Jews, and to everybody in between. And the closer that we get to the Sea of Galilee, the more you're going to see boats being made, or even places to house live fish. This is a massive, massive business, not only for Magdala, but the surrounding areas as well. Just a few miles up the road is Capernaum. And of course, we know several fishermen from that town in particular. And Magdala most likely would have been a hub for all their type of businesses that they dealt with. So Peter, James, John, and Jesus all would have been here at some point, I'm sure of it. And another amazing thing that's at this city of Magdala, of course we have the first century synagogue, then that means that we have to have mikveh somewhere. Mikveh are the cleansing pools that they would use every single time they go to synagogue. So not only does that mean that these mikveh are here and amazing, but also that almost certainly, like in my mind 100%, Jesus was in one of these mikveh here in Magdala. Really, really cool. They've even filled this one up with water here to show what it would look like with filled water. I don't think this is a natural spring. I think they are pumping in water here, but still really cool to see this. Now, my hypothesis, at least for this mikveh, is that you would walk down one side of the staircase, you would cleanse yourself, and then you would walk out the other side of the staircase in order to be cleansed. Now, you would be naked in here, obviously, so this could have been the women's mikveh, and then there's the men's side on the other side. So I'm not 100% sure how it would have worked here, and I'm sure that the researchers aren't 100% sure either, but we have some good guesses as to what these could be. Of course, these definitely look like Jewish mikveh from everything else that we've seen from all the other locations that we have here in Israel. Now, this area right here is where the domestic houses were for Magdala, at least the ones that we've uncovered. They know this because they found things like food preparation zones, glass, different coins and things like that that would have been found in a household, including pottery, which is one of the most common things you find in an archaeological dig like this one. These are houses that were in existence during the first century, during the time of Jesus. That's amazing. They could just go, I don't know, 20 or 30 yards to the synagogue, or right across the street to the mikveh right behind the camera. But if we think about it, one of these houses could have belonged to Mary Magdalene herself, which is a cool thought to have, although we don't really know, and I don't know that we could ever really find out. I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know in the comments down below if you guys learned something about Magdala today. As always, like and subscribe as it really helps out the channel, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.
For those of you who stuck around to the very end of the video, if you want to see a walkthrough of Magdala, we actually have that posted up on our Patreon, so go ahead and check that out over there at snipesupport.com. That would be the best way to help support us on these videos right here. Thank you so much.